Hey everyone, Jesse Lear here. I'm really excited about this particular interview, episode 2 of my new interview series. I'm here with Brittany Hodak. And like I said, I'm very excited about this because Brittany and I have been friends for quite a while, and we've got to know each other pretty well through an organization that brought us together at an event in New York City several years ago. What was that, 4 or 5 years ago now?
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm. So right now we're in Nashville. Matt, who's behind the camera, and I flew down yesterday and sort of a mixing business with pleasure sort of trip. And we were out in the honky tonks last night, and now we're here in the office building. A friend of mine and just been gracious enough to let us use the conference room. So super excited to talk to you, Brittany, and really just to see you again. It's been way too long.
Yeah, it's been way too long.
Yeah, but I've got lots of awesome questions for you that really want to hear more about what you're into nowadays, and you've had a lot change in your personal life as well. And for those of you who recognize Brittany, the reason you do might be because she was on Shark Tank several years ago, and we're going to get into that a little bit more as well. But Brittany is one of the founders of a company called ZinePak, which is based in Manhattan. And ZinePak is, do you want to kind of give us a quick overview of what ZinePak does? I know your bio says that it aims to elevate super fandom into a science. What does that really mean?
So ZinePak is a super fun company. We get to work with some of the best entertainers in the world, some of the most fun athletes and actors and musicians to help them make stuff for their super fans. So when somebody is launching a new album or a world tour or a video, they come to us and we help them make fun stuff that people are going to want to collect and keep forever and ever. So
that's awesome.
We've done probably 300 different projects over the past several years, and everyone is a little different, but the common thread is content. So we're creating usually like a book or a magazine or some other kind of collectible piece that's helping these entertainers tell their stories to their fans in a way that might be a little bit differently than the way they normally communicate with their fans.
Awesome, awesome. And Brittany's worked with some pretty big names to do this actually, and in addition to running your company, as though that didn't keep you busy enough, Brittany has also contributed in many, many ways to Forbes.
Right.
Yeah, and then
Forbes.
What, over 250 articles or something like that now?
Gosh, probably something close to that for Forbes. Yeah, I started writing about 2 years ago, I think, as one of their entertainment and media contributors. So that keeps me pretty busy as well.
On top of speaking and several other things, right? So
I like to stay busy.
Yeah. So I've been very busy, and you can see from just a brief intro that I'm giving you to her bio why we're so excited to have this conversation today. But wanted to start out just asking you this question. I mean, ZinePak now is a very successful company, but as you and I both know, it doesn't just happen overnight. These types of things take a lot of time. How did you get into entrepreneurship originally? Like, what was the thing that made you decide, okay, I don't want to go maybe the normal route of a 9 to 5. I want to start a business? Or did it even happen that way?
So I had a few bosses who inspired me never to have another boss. And like so many entrepreneurs, had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder of, I don't like where I work. I feel like I'm not being valued. I feel like nobody is listening to me. And I think my ideas are really great. And so I'm going to take a chance and see whether or not I can be successful. So I was working at an advertising agency and met my co-founder, Kim. And she had sort of the same little bit of chip on her shoulder of, wow, these people that we're working for and some of the people I've worked for before really seem to be super successful, but like we seem to be working super hard. And, it's easy as an employee to get disgruntled, I guess. It's maybe an extreme word for it, but discouraged, shall we say, when you're working harder and harder and harder and harder for somebody and not seeing more and more benefit come your way. I talked to a lot of people who went into a field thinking, I'm going to get to participate in the upside that I'm working so hard for, but then after working 70, 80 hours a week for a year, maybe they get like a very small bonus, or maybe they get a 5% raise the following year. And it's hard as an employee to see that for a long period of time and not get a little bit bummed out. So there was a little bit of that going on with me and Kim, but mostly it was that we had an idea that we thought was a really great idea that we just weren't going to be able to get off the ground within the infrastructure of where we worked. So I had worked with Walmart for several years at a previous job, and also at the agency where we both worked. and had pitched an idea to them that they said that they loved. And even with the support of Walmart, neither of my employees wanted to pursue this in any way. They were like, it's a good idea, Brittany, but just, please do what we ask you to do. Like, go back to your desk, do your work.
Most people don't believe in something until it's already proven, right?
Right. Like, you've got enough to keep you busy, so enough with this. And, I kind of just thought, I'm 27 years old, my husband and I don't have kids yet, we don't have a mortgage yet. If there's ever going to be a chance for me to kind of flip a coin and see whether or not entrepreneurship is going to be a good path for me, this is it. And Kim was 25 at the time, she felt the same way. So we said, we're going to quit our jobs, start a company, and we're going to give ourselves 1 year for it to be successful. And if we can't be successful in a year, then we'll reevaluate, and maybe we'll just, go back and get jobs again. And I always tell people, if you're considering entrepreneurship, there's certainly no shame in failing. The overwhelming percentage of companies do fail. So you're going to learn a whole lot more in a year of even failed entrepreneurship than you are in several years of working for somebody else. So for any of the people out there watching that are considering maybe chasing an idea or going after something, I always say, just go for it. If you don't have a lot to lose, if you're truly in a position to where, you've saved enough money or you have insurance and you're able to take sort of a low risk, potential high reward path, then I always encourage people to go for it.
So, having never been an entrepreneur before, a lot of the questions I get from people who watch our videos are around this topic of failure, and it's very obvious that there are multiple mindsets that people have toward it. The one group of people has the sort of mindset that you have toward it, where it's really not that big of a deal. You're going to learn a lot from it anyway, and then you've got the majority, I would say, of other people who are in many situations scared to death of it, and it holds them back and it keeps them from ever doing the thing that they're excited about or going, for it to create maybe a better life that they want. What was different with you? What was that thing that made it click for you that made you say, I'm going to do this even though I may be scared of failure? Or were you not even scared?
I wasn't really that scared of failure because I really hated my job.
Okay. So it was like the less of two pains.
So ready to get out.
Okay.
I mean, my boss said to me in a meeting one time, I don't pay you to have ideas, I pay you to implement the ideas that I give you. And at that point I was like, I'm out. That
would make it easier.
So I was so ready to do something else and try something else. And I think in general, I'm not particularly scared of failure. I think a lot of times when people are scared of failure, it's not necessarily failure, it's something that comes after that, right? So it's easy to go down that rabbit hole to say, oh, well, if I fail, that means I'm going to lose all my money. And if I lose all my money, it means I'm going to lose my house. And if I lose my house, it means I'm going to be homeless. And if I'm homeless, it means I can't take care of my kids. It's easy to sort of snowball.
Yeah.
And if you sort of break it apart, failure is not nearly as bad as a lot of people sort of build it up in their minds to be it's not that scary of a thing. And I think once you can kind of look at it and say, okay, well, what would failure actually mean? A lot of times it's not as serious or as scary as it kind of snowballs in your mind. Yeah.
Now, your relationship with your partner, which now is, from my understanding, really awesome, and you guys have worked together for many years. It didn't start as two people saying we're going to start this business together, did it? It wasn't there kind of a different relationship between the two of you beforehand, and then it later turned into a business partnership?
We were working together.
Okay.
We worked at the agency together. We hadn't known each other that long when we started the business. So I had been planning on starting the business and went to Kim and said, what do you think? Do you want to go for this together? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm not super happy here either. So that's how it started. Yeah.
Cool.
But we hadn't known each other that long. We'd literally known each other a few weeks when we decided to start the business.
Really?
And 3 months when we actually incorporated the business. And neither one of us knew anything about starting a business. I literally Googled how to start a business. So anybody watching this video right now is more prepared to start a business than I was, because I had never even watched a video.
You had no training whatsoever?
No, I knew nothing at all.
Interesting.
Which is probably part of the reason, had I known the statistics about how many businesses don't make it and, how hard it is to actually get something off the ground, if I had known how much work was ahead of me, maybe I would have thought, again, given it a second thought about starting a company. But we were kind of blissfully ignorant, and it worked out pretty well for us.
That's really cool. I've heard that referred to before as optimism bias. And
I like that.
a lot of entrepreneurs really have that, I think, where we're like, we can totally do this, we can figure it out, and it's
Right.
almost not realistic, but yet it's very necessary, and it's sort of like this belief that we can make anything work, the stakes aren't that high.
Yeah, well, and I like the optimism bias, because I feel like
Yeah.
that's me if I'm watching like American Ninja Warrior and I think, oh, I could do that, and there's no way in the world
Right.
I could ever really do that,
Right.
but I feel like I can, which gets me in trouble sometimes. Like I'll,
On American Ninja Warrior?
not on American Ninja Warrior, but
Okay.
like a few months ago, the dishwasher wasn't working, and I was like, I can fix a dishwasher. Turns out I can't fix a dishwasher.
So did
just
you
stuff like
watch
that.
YouTube videos?
Yeah,
or-
I watched the
okay.
video and I was like, oh, I can do that. I can figure out what they're saying there and apply it to this completely different dishwasher with totally different parts, because it's a dishwasher. How hard could it be? Turns out hard. There are lots of other examples from throughout my life of seeing something and thinking like, oh, I can probably do that, and like not so much. Like in my head, I would totally win Project Runway. In real life, would not win Project Runway. Although I did just Project Runway a pretty awesome Halloween costume for my son.
I believe it. What was it? Snoopy, maybe?
No, he was
Huge Snoopy fan.
he was Jim Harbaugh for
Oh,
Halloween.
of course.
Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh, and they don't make a lot of the head coach apparel in 6-week-old baby size, so
Oh, okay.
I had to improvise a couple trips to Hobby Lobby.
So we actually had to come to Nashville. I made it seem like we just came here for fun, but we actually came here because Brittany's such a big Michigan fan that Ohio State would not let her in Columbus. So we
Not
came
this week for sure. Yeah.
Right. So that actually brings up a really, really cool topic that I wanted to jump onto, which is your new life in Nashville. Brittany recently moved to Nashville and also had a baby. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And tell us about Cato and where his name came from, what it's like being a mom and an entrepreneur at the same time. I'm really, really curious to hear about that, because I know a lot of people watching might be in a position where you're having, you aren't single and 21 and have all the time in the world to start a business. You actually have life to balance. So tell us a little bit about that whole side of life that is new for you.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say to anybody out there who's a parent thinking about starting a business, you can absolutely do it, because it is so much harder to raise a person than to start a business. Like, it's not even close. In my
You've done
head,
both, and you know.
in my head, I was like, oh, I can totally raise a kid, because I started a business and that wasn't that hard. So much harder to have a newborn. Way, way, way harder.
Wow.
So anybody out there who is a parent, especially if your kid's already like a couple years old and you've made it past all this insanely difficult stuff, like starting a business is nothing.
That's wow.
So I thought I knew it was gonna be hard, to have a baby, but it's really hard to create. It's like you've got this like amazing little person who's so awesome and you love so much, but they need you like literally all the time. With a business, you can kind of like put it away for a couple hours, like not answer that email, sleep through the night. In most cases,
Not with a baby.
your business isn't like waking you up every 45 minutes. Baby, way harder than business. So anybody out there who's watching who's a parent, you can definitely start a business.
There you go. So you have what it takes. So tell me about his name.
Oh yeah, so his name is Cato, and my husband and I were trying to come up with a really fun name, and I'm a writer, and Cato is actually my last name, our last name, Hodak in reverse. So Kadoh is a palindrome. So, and we gave him a J for the middle name. We were trying to come up with a middle name that worked, that kept the palindrome. And for a while, we were planning on race car, because that was my husband's favorite palindrome. And I was like, I can't pull the trigger on naming my baby race car. So we ended up going with a J, which is a tribute to quite a few awesome guys in his life. Including my dad, his name was Jody, my husband's name is Jeff, and then two of Jeff's grandfathers, Jose and John. So Cato J is his name.
I love it. I love it. So one interesting thing that we actually, Matt, could title this entire video "How to Get Your Child's College Education Paid For Before He Turns 1," which is something Brittany's actually done. Tell us a little bit about how that happened. This is a crazy story.
So I was in New York for the past decade, and my husband and I moved to Nashville just over a year ago. Cato was actually born on the 1-year anniversary of the date that we closed on our house in Nashville.
Cool.
And so we moved down here, and a little bit of a culture shock. There's a lot of differences between New York and Nashville. I grew up in Oklahoma, so a lot of them were things that I knew but had sort of like forgotten or just never encountered as an adult. And one of the things that I didn't know was in Nashville, it's like this huge deal to do a gender reveal to let people know if you're having a boy or a girl, which I never knew was a thing.
So New York, that wasn't a
Well,
big thing in your circle, at least.
Well, plus being, 32 in New York, like none of your friends have kids. Everybody here has like a 10-year-old at 32, but
Right.
in New York, nobody has a kid when you're in your 30s. So, it wasn't like I was hanging out at like baby showers and stuff. So once we told people we're pregnant, everybody was like, how are you going to do your gender reveal? And I was like, doesn't the doctor just tell you? Like, I thought
and
you would
then
just
you
go get an ultrasound and they would say like, you're having whatever.
Right.
I didn't know you had to like make a production out of it.
Right.
So, and as an entrepreneur, I'm like, I don't have time to deal with this.
Right. Yeah.
My husband, who's a huge Michigan football fan, said, wouldn't it be cool if we could get Jim Harbaugh, who's the head football coach of Michigan, to let us know if it's a boy or a girl? And I was like, come on, that would be amazing, but Jim Harbaugh is super busy recruiting, doing all of these things. We don't know him, there's like no chance that he's gonna like do this gender reveal. But we wrote this letter and we sent the results, like the ultrasound tech puts the results in an envelope and you don't know what it is. And we just wrote a letter and sent it to Coach Harbaugh. And a couple weeks later, got a letter in the mail from Coach Harbaugh. And I was like, oh my gosh, I called my husband at work. He was so excited. I FaceTimed him. We opened it. And he not only let us know that we were having a little boy, but he offered us a scholarship for Cato to play on the 2035 Michigan football team, which is incredible because out-of-state tuition at Michigan, in 2035, that could be like $500,000 value. So we were so excited. And, my husband immediately put it up on Facebook and I shared it. And the head of the alumni board at my school reached out to me and said, wait a minute.
Which was not Michigan.
Which is not Michigan. I went to school at the University of Central Arkansas in Conway, and Jesse, who runs the alumni club, said, wait a minute, you're going to just send your kid to Michigan? Like, we didn't even get a chance to play here. And I was like, hey, make me an offer. He's not even been born yet. There's still time for him to change his mind. And so he said, I think we can match it. So actually got an offer for him to go to my alma mater, the University of Central Arkansas, too. So Cato will get to decide between those two schools.
So funny. So before he was born, we had 2 full-ride scholarship offers.
Yeah, I was like 5 months pregnant, I think.
That's
5
hilarious.
or 6 months pregnant.
That's
and we had
really,
the 2 offers,
really
so we were like, great, all that money that we were going to save for the college fund, use that for something else.
Right.
Put in a swimming pool or something.
Right. It's an awesome story. So you mentioned a few minutes ago your partnership with Kim, and I'm very familiar with business partnerships as well. Travis and I started our company together 7 years ago. You and Kim started your company together. Tell us a little bit about partnerships and what those are like. And I know for a lot of people, I always think of the quote by Dave Ramsey, the financial guru, who says, the only kind of ship that sinks is a partnership. And I thought that was really funny. And by the time I heard it for the first time, Travis and I were already experiencing a lot of success with VIP. And so I just laughed it off, and I don't really believe it, but it can be difficult. And all of us know examples of times where somebody's partnered with somebody else to start a company and it's not worked out. Do you need a partner to start a business? How have you seen that being an asset for you? Because obviously you guys are an amazing team. You've worked together for a long time. What's your opinion of partnerships, and should people seek to have one?
I think under the right circumstance, a partnership is incredible. It's a lot like having a baby. Like it is so hard to have a little kiddo, and I can't even imagine trying to do it as a single parent. Like it's my husband and I are constantly, like, okay, you got the kid, okay, I got the puppies, oh, okay, you got the puppies, I got the kid. There's just so much that even with 2 people, it feels like, I would say controlled chaos, but a lot of times it's more like uncontrolled chaos. I can't imagine being a single parent. It must be so incredibly difficult. And I think that there's a lot of parallels between that and starting a business. So for instance, I was incredibly fortunate to be able to take 6 or 7 weeks off for maternity leave because Kim was like, I got it. You're having a kid. Like, I got this. And there have been a few times throughout the 7 years of our partnership where she's needed to like go on vacation for a couple weeks, or she's had a family thing she's had to deal with for a week, or I've had a family thing I've had to deal with. So to have a partner that you trust, that you can say, okay, I can step away and not have to worry about this, is just a huge blessing and something that makes it so much easier. So I think in that regard, having a partner is something that just about any entrepreneur would probably love to have. You know, there are, I don't want to say drawbacks, because it's certainly not a drawback, but it's like any other relationship in your life. Sometimes one of you wants to do one thing and the other one wants to do the other, and you just got to respect each other enough to be able to have an honest conversation about it and say, you know, here's what I think, okay, here's what you think, we've got to get to a point to where we're aligned. And you know, I think that looking back over the past 7 years, there haven't been that, honestly, Kim and I are usually on the same page about stuff, but the things where I wanted to do one thing and she's wanted to do another, or she's wanted to do one thing and I wanted to do another, usually it's whoever is the most passionate about it wins. I think like whoever feels most strongly. We both have enough respect for the other to say, okay, well, if you feel that strongly about it, then cool, let's do it. You know, I trust you. And you know, there haven't really been any major missteps. A couple of things, maybe over the course of 7 years, if there are a couple of things we could go back and do differently, we might try to change it. But for the most part, I think our business is a lot stronger and a lot better than it would have been had either one of us tried to start it on our own.
That's really cool. And if you're listening to Brittany talk about her view on partnerships right now in business, one of the things you might notice is that not once did she talk about, oh, you got to find the right skills that are, you know, that complement each other and things like that. We heard about, she used the word respect. You respect the other person, you use the word trust. And you really, what I heard was a lot of talk really about values being aligned as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the values is a really important thing. When I hear people talk about, oh, I want a co-founder who has this skill set because I don't have it, to me that's a little bit like, oh, I want to go marry somebody who's a really good cook because I don't want to make dinner.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it?
Right. Like if that's what you're basing it on, you're probably going to find that there are a whole lot of other areas that you're going to be disappointed. So it is absolutely about finding somebody that you gel with. Honestly, it's about finding somebody that you won't go crazy being in a room with for like 18 hours a day for an undetermined number of years. Because early on, that's what it is. You're spending all of your time together, you're traveling together, you're talking to each other all the time. So it's finding somebody who you're not going to go crazy doing that with, and also somebody that you can trust when you're separate from each other for a long period of time.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing too, because not everybody's even, you know, some people might be watching this and thinking, oh, I've got this one friend who I could ask to be my partner, but not everybody is cut out to be an entrepreneur, right? Or are they? Can anyone become an entrepreneur?
You know, I think in one sense, yes, anybody can start a business, anybody can become an entrepreneur. I don't think anyone can become a successful entrepreneur. It's like anybody can play basketball, but not everybody's going to be in the NBA.
Got it.
So it's about the level of success that people have, and I absolutely believe just like sports, just like, you know, the arts, just like anything else, there is a certain level of gift, like natural talent that some people have that's certainly going to propel them. That doesn't mean that somebody else who is born with less of a talent can't work that much harder to get to that point. But I do believe that there are some characteristics that make people more predisposed to be successful as entrepreneurs.
What are a couple of those?
I think one of them is what did you call it before? Optimism bias. I like that. Not
I didn't make that up.
Being incredibly afraid to take risks. Honestly, being able to handle rejection is a big one. As an entrepreneur, you get told no hundreds of times a week. I mean, still, we're 7 years in, we're a very successful company. We do millions of dollars of business every year, and still I'm told no so much more than I'm told yes. And that's just part of it. A friend of mine told me right before I left New York, he is on Broadway, and he's like, I don't know, 28, 29 years old, and he said, you know, it's getting harder to land these parts. I'm really tired of all this rejection. I think I'm going to start a business. And I laughed, and like not on purpose to laugh at him, but I was like, Gabe, like you
think you see rejection now?
That's rejection. Hilarious. Like wait until you start a business. People are going to be telling you no more than you can count. So I think that's another one that you've got to be really resilient, and you've also got to be able to be really persistent in the face of people telling you no.
I think those are great examples, because that's something that can be essentially learned. Like you can get used to people saying no. If right now you can't stand rejection or being told no, it's something that certainly it happens 4, 5, 6, 10, 12 times, you get more comfortable with it. So it might be harder for some people, easier for others, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. You might just have to work a little bit harder, which
Right.
is, I think, inspiring. I think that's
Yeah,
really cool, because I know there are a lot of people smarter than me. So the fact that I can jump in and really just outwork and make something happen is pretty cool.
Yeah, well, you're a very smart guy, so
Thank
that helps. But yeah, and I think also creativity. I mean, if you're born with a higher level of natural creativity, that's certainly going to be an asset, because as an entrepreneur, you're creating things out of thin air all the time. Like that's essentially, if you boil it down, like what you're doing as an entrepreneur is making things from nothing.
Right. You're imagining and then making it happen.
Right, you're sort of like manifesting these things into real life from your brain. So if you're born with a higher predisposition to be creative, that's absolutely an asset, but that doesn't mean that you can't work at it. I'm a staunch believer that people can work at becoming more creative or being more comfortable with their own voice and their own ideas. So that's another thing. If you're not comfortable going into a meeting and saying, hey, I have this big idea, you're probably going to find it uncomfortable being an entrepreneur, unless you're in a very specific niche where that's not so important. But for most businesses, it's all about interacting with people and being able to sell your vision to someone and getting them to come on board and let you execute that vision for them.
Gotcha.
And that's across the board. That's with your clients, that's with your employees, that's with your vendors, that's with your
partners.
You're going to have to sell your vision for your company or product all the time.
Hugely important.
All the time.
Yeah.
So if you're not able to do that, then you're gonna probably run into some more roadblocks than other people who do have that level of comfort.
Yeah, definitely gives us a really good picture, I think, those 4 or 5 things of what to do. That's really cool. We were talking about failure and rejection a minute ago, and I would really like to hear, and I think everybody else would too, we're looking at all of the success that you've had in entrepreneurship. Tell us maybe about a failure that's been especially hard for you that you've gone through since your journey began.
There have been, so we call ourselves the super fan company. There have been a couple times where I've gone all out, put my entire heart and soul into trying to work with some people who, in a couple instances, were my idols, my heroes, and it just didn't work out. And that's always a bummer.
We experienced that one together a little bit, didn't we?
Yeah, we're not gonna name any names. We're not gonna name any names. So let's just say I tell people now, don't try to work with your heroes, because it could end very badly.
Yeah.
At least that's been my experience. So that's always hard. And I mean, it doesn't have to be a big failure to feel like failure, right? It feels like failure every time I pitch a project and it doesn't come to fruition. That happens all the time. Our CRM that we use to track not only all of our client-facing stuff, but also our projects that are sort of in our pipelines. I probably have to close out 20 projects a week that just crashed and burned for some reason. But that's reality.
Right.
And if those 20 projects hadn't crashed and burned, it might not have led me to the 4 or 5 projects that did come to fruition that week or that month. So it's all about, I always tell people, a no today doesn't mean no forever. And it's very important in entrepreneurship to know that if somebody tells you no, that's the relationship shouldn't end there, because they might be a yes in 3 months or 6 months or a year. And I also tell people, I don't know who said this, I should look this up, because it's a quote that has certainly benefited me over the years, is never take no for an answer from someone without the authority to tell you yes. So,
wow, that's good.
Because a lot of times people go to somebody who is a gatekeeper, and that person's whole responsibility might be to say no. They might get 100 people coming to them asking them for something for, an artist they manage, or a director that they work with, or an athlete who plays for them. And, they may be so busy that they can't see that what you're offering is actually something that would be great for their client. So a lot of times we're told no by people that we have to say, respectfully, I think you're wrong. I think that this is a good idea. And so a lot of times we have to go to other people beyond the first person who tells us no. And it's always a unique situation when you do that, because you have to always be respectful of the people who first told you no. You never want to burn a relationship. You never want to make somebody feel angry. But at the same time, if you feel strongly enough that you have something to offer that's going to make things better for someone, then you owe it to that person to keep trying to get to them, so that they have the ultimate responsibility of telling you yes or no.
Never take no for an answer from someone who does not have the authority to tell you yes. I love that. Maybe Matt can even put it up on the screen.
Ooh,
really
Matt,
like
no pressure, but it's a really good idea.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great perspective, I think. Let's talk about achievements. What's maybe one achievement that you're super, super proud of, you love to talk about?
You know, honestly, can I say having my baby? Is that cheesy?
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's so funny. It's when we started ZinePak, I was very achievement oriented, I would say, in terms of like, I want to get this award or I want to be on this list, because it just, you know, that was a way to get business. You know, any kind of visibility is like a biz dev thing ultimately, but also it feels good, right, when somebody gives you a trophy or an award.
Right. Yeah.
But having a kid is so awesome, and it's really weird too, because like you've got this little thing that you love more than anything in the world, and like they don't even know who you are. Like some other human could just like come take them, and they like wouldn't know the difference for a while. I mean, my baby's like 8 weeks old, so he's starting to like know who I am. But yeah, I would say having a baby, which was hard. It's like the hardest thing I've ever done, I would say, but like the coolest thing I've ever done.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. So one of the things that I think is the most inspiring about your story just is the way that you've been able to balance. And it sounds like, especially from the answer to that question, you figured out how to keep your values in order as well. A lot of people sort of lose that sense of things as their business grows, and family ends up taking the back seat and things like that. I think that's really cool that you've been able to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I tell people all the time, think about, you know, what it is that you ultimately want. And for some people that might be, you know, they need $100 million to live the kind of life they want to live. But for me, like my dreams were always to like have an arcade in my house.
Okay.
And like be able to eat as much Mexican food as I want to eat.
What arcade games would you have?
At some point I'm gonna have like a full built out, like when we bought our house, I wanted a house that had like an arcade space. So we have that now. We're gonna be building it up over, you know, the next couple of years. But obviously skee ball, you gotta have skee ball, pinball, I love pinball. But we have like air hockey and pool and a couple like smaller arcade games.
I think I made the mistake of playing you in skee ball once, didn't I?
Did I get really competitive?
I'm pretty sure I lost.
I mean, I've spent a lot of hours and a lot of quarters perfecting my skee ball skill. Well, because it goes back to being a risk taker, right? Like when I play skee ball, I play to win. I only aim for the 100. Because if you can get like the 100 4 of the 9 times, then that's better than aiming for the 50 every time and maybe like a couple of 50s, some 40s, some 30s. Like, why play if you're not rolling for hundreds?
Another quote from Matt. Taken straight from skee ball. Exactly.
In skee ball and in life.
Right.
Go for it.
Right. Maybe you should get that one on that. That's great.
Yeah.
So tell us about all of these transitions you've been through. If you could go back 10 years, would you change anything? What would you do different?
I mean, big picture, no. I would do everything. I'm so happy where I'm at in my life. Smaller detail, there's definitely things I would change. Like there's certain clients that I would have said no to instead of yes to. Little things like that. But in terms of the big picture stuff, no. I mean, I think where we're at now is pretty awesome. One thing I will tell entrepreneurs who are on like a high growth trajectory, like we were, try not to get caught up in the bigger is better. You know, we should have more employees, we should have more projects, we should be making more money. That's healthy to a certain extent, but much more important than being a big company is being the right size company and having the right number of employees for what your business is and taking on the right number of projects and having the right amount of responsibility, I guess.
Which really would come down to your goals, right?
Right. Well, kind of like I was saying before, would it be great to have, hundreds of $1 million? I mean, probably. I'm assuming that'd probably be pretty cool, but like I don't need that. Like if I won the lottery tomorrow, or if I sold my business for $50 million tomorrow, like I'm not going to move out of my house. I love my house. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'd buy some arcade games faster. Like my arcade would get a lot cooler.
Right.
Maybe I'd put in a swimming pool. But like I said, I've got Cato's college money that I've already sort of earmarked for school. But no, it's all about figuring out what you want to do with your 24 hours a day. And what you spend those 24 hours a day on adds up over the weeks and months and ultimately years. And, you know, it's very easy to work 18 hours a day and then look back 2 or 3 years later and say, man, I wish I'd spent more time with my friends, or I wish I'd spent more time with my family, if you don't know what your values are ahead of time. And if your values are that you want to work all the time, great, like that's awesome, work all the time. But if your values are, you know, I want to spend time with family or friends or volunteer in my community or at my church, then, you know, you've got to sort of figure out what that pie chart of the 24 hours looks like and spend your days accordingly.
Living intentionally, really, is what we're talking about.
Exactly.
That's really cool. So, one of the things I've noticed that tends to happen with entrepreneurs like you and I is we go through all of these different transitions, all these different steps. We're told no 9 times to every 1 yes that we get. And then something crazy will happen, like we'll go on Shark Tank or something like that. And then everybody says, wow, how did they get so lucky? I wish I could come up with an idea like that, then I would be on Shark Tank just like them. And they don't tend to see all the journey, which we've kind of been talking about for the last few minutes here. But it is really, really cool to celebrate those big wins, and Shark Tank for you is one of those that I think about. If I remember correctly, you got offers from 4 out of the 5 sharks. And so tell us a little bit about the experience of being on Shark Tank. What's it, you know, we all watch the show, but what's it actually like being on it?
It was really cool. Shark Tank was an interesting experience because we didn't apply to be on the show or audition to be on the show. We just got a call one day from somebody saying, you know, hey, you should come be on Shark Tank. And I thought, well, that sounds
from like a
fun.
producer or something?
Yeah, from a casting producer.
Wow.
And he had seen us in Inc. magazine and said, you know, I think you guys should come on the show. And we thought, yeah, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. And yeah, it was really cool. The one thing that we hadn't really even thought about, to be honest, when we did the show, was the residual effect over the years. Because obviously Shark Tank airs in syndication all over the world, which I didn't know at the time, but on CNBC all the time. So our episode airs like, I don't know, maybe once every 3 weeks or so,
Really?
every 4 weeks on average.
I wasn't aware of that either.
And we never know when it's going to air. And there's all these marathons all the time where there'll be like, you know, 15 Shark Tanks in a row. But we always know because there'll be, you know, 25,000 people on our website all of a sudden. We'll have like 100 emails in our general inbox.
Like,
But
oh, it
it's
must have
been
been on Shark Tank again.
we're like, oh, it
Yeah.
re-aired again. And you know, we have like our checklist of things that we do each time we know that it's aired to make sure that we're keeping up with all of the inbound interest. But it's been a really cool little biz dev generator that way, in that, you know, a lot of people are seeing us. And even now, it's been over 3 years since we filmed the episode, but because we tried to sort of be evergreen in what we were saying on the show, it's been like a really nice little tool for us. And many of the companies who are on Shark Tank end up not doing the deal after the show that's negotiated. I always tell
Even
people,
when they get a deal on the show.
even when they get a deal on the show, because you're in there for probably like an hour on average. We were in there for about an hour, and our producers told us that was, you know, kind of like right on where most people are. Think about it. Like, do you want to marry somebody after you've spent an hour with them, even if it's the best
Right.
first date ever?
Right.
You know, you might get caught up in the moment and on that first date be like, yes, I want to get married. And then on all the dates that follow, be like, is this the person I ultimately want to marry?
Right.
So something like 2/3 of the deals that are yes deals on Shark Tank don't actually go through
Interesting.
in the aftermath of sort of the due diligence phase of learning more about the sharks and the sharks learning more about you and sort of the back and forth. And, you know, it can be, everybody can have the best intentions in the moment of wanting to close the deal, and you can have wonderful sharks and wonderful entrepreneurs and just find out you're not really a great fit for each other. That, you know, it's not really going to help move the business in the direction that you want to go, or maybe the sharks want to go in a different direction than you want to go. So we were one of those, you know, 2/3 roughly of businesses that in the aftermath of the show, you know, decided with the sharks, maybe this like isn't the best thing. But we're still on great terms with everybody. It was a really cool experience for us, and super glad we did it because, like I said, we've gotten
Sounds like it really
a
worked out
lot
anyway.
of really
Yeah.
amazing clients who found us because they saw the rerun. They didn't see it on ABC, but they saw it on CNBC 3 years later.
That's so cool. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
it's
So
fun.
you went on Shark Tank. You had 4 out of the 5 sharks. You know, making offers or whatever. One of the things that I always wonder, and I've had several friends go on Shark Tank. We almost went on Shark Tank with our company as well. Ended up deciding it wasn't the right fit for us. But The thing I always think about is you're standing there and you're in there for, like you said, an hour maybe, but you're negotiating kind of on the spot with these sharks, right? I know a lot of times we're watching this happen, we're going, how can you, that's a lot of pressure to be able to decide between these different offers or try to convince them to do things a certain way, or maybe they ask you for more equity than you wanted to give. Did you really have to make those decisions on the spot, or did you secretly have time to think about it and come back and weren't on air?
You're like in the room, they start filming and they film until you leave the room. But what most entrepreneurs do is think about all the scenarios ahead of time. So Kim and I knew how we were going to answer every potential offer. We came up with a ton of contingencies of, well, what about this amount of equity and this amount of dollars, or this type of deal and this type of structure, or 2 sharks, are we going to get more equity if there's 2 sharks or if there's 3 sharks? So we knew pretty much what our game plan was going in. So in the episode, you see us kind of like conferring with each other, but we were just like telling each other jokes because we knew what we were going to do. So we were just sort of like laughing and talking.
That's really cool.
Because we both knew what it's like having a playbook in sports, right? Like if you know how you're going to react to something.
Right. So you essentially eliminated the potential for a surprise by preparing in advance. So you were able to think on the spot.
Yeah.
Because none of them were new thoughts, really.
Right.
Yeah. That's really cool.
That's honestly how you should enter every negotiation, right? Like they say, never go to the negotiating table without knowing every single outcome that could happen and what you want to leave the table with or without. And Shark Tank is sort of just like the televised version of that. You've got to be prepared before you go into the room for any potential outcome.
So a lot of people on that show, as in the sharks, are really big names. Who is your, what you would say maybe biggest, maybe not even the biggest, but one of your biggest role models in business? Is there a particular entrepreneur that you maybe watch their videos or something like that and you strive to learn from?
I've been really fortunate to meet a lot of like big deal entrepreneurs, celebrity entrepreneurs, I guess. And to be honest, the entrepreneurs who inspire me most are my friends. The ones who are, at a higher level than me, who I get to see sort of up close what they're going through firsthand, because there's like a realness there, and there's, it's easy to say like, oh, Sarah Blakely is amazing and incredible, and she is, like, she's absolutely an inspiration, and any woman or man for that matter should be able to look to her and say like, what a fantastic, incredible role model. Right. But like, I don't know her, right? Like, it's so much more real for me to think about, Faith, who's a mutual friend of ours, Faith Dillman, who has an amazing company called Marbaloo, to know how she's grown her business over the past 5 years from, an idea to like 40 employees. Or John Hall, another friend of ours, who with Kelsey has a company called Influence & Co. And they have, 75, 80 employees now.
You just came out with a book as well.
Yeah, it's called Top of Mind. It's an amazing book. Like that, John's one of my best friends. And he, to me, is somebody who I can go to when I have something that I'm trying to figure out, if it's like a problem I can't solve with the business, or he can come to me with a problem and he can't solve with his business. So I draw so much inspiration from my peer group of people who I can look at and say, I'm so damn proud of you because I know how hard you work to get from point A to point B, right, and look at your incredible growth over the past year. And for me, that's a lot more usable in terms of if I'm trying to like figure out how to get through something hard or solve a problem, for me to think like, oh man, I saw Jesse go through this 6 months ago, and he got through it, so I know I can get through it too, and I'm going to pick up the phone and call him. Like, that's where I draw a lot of my inspiration and a lot of the motivation to help get me through the tough times is through my peer group. And I think that's why it's so important that anybody who's starting a business join some sort of community group so that they start to develop a network of peers. Because I get emails all the time from people who are like, oh, I'm starting a business, can you help me? Or, oh, I'm starting a business, can you mentor me? And the reality is like, I don't have time for that.
Right.
First of all, you should, right, I don't know the person. You should never send somebody an email that says like, I want you to be my mentor, like that. Like, what am I going to do with that? Like, there's no actionable thing for me. Like, if somebody were to send me an email that says, hey, I have a very specific problem, I've done my research, I can't figure it out, but I feel like maybe you went through something similar because I read an article you wrote where you talked about it. Can you please advise me on what I should do in this path? That's, yeah, like I'm gonna get on the phone with that person for 15 minutes because they've clearly done their research, they've clearly thought about it. But, you know, I get 5 or 6 emails a week from people who are like, oh, I wanna be an entrepreneur, will you help me? No, like I wanna be, you know, I wanna be a lot of things. Like if I wanna be a pro golfer, I can't just like email Roy McIlroy and be like, hey, I wanna be a golfer, can you help me?
Right.
Not that I'm by any stretch of the imagination the Roy story of entrepreneurs, because I'm definitely not, but you know, it's about like everybody has to find their peer group. And if you're trying to get started as an entrepreneur, yeah, it's one thing to be able to watch videos or read articles from people, but the people who I think are going to help you the most on your journey are your peers, the people who are going to be going through it right there with you. And that's what you've got to find. Don't spend your time trying to find somebody who's made it to help you. Spend your time finding other people who are trying to make it, who are going to want to make it with you together, because that's where you're going to draw all of your power.
So really awesome tips hidden in that. So I hope you guys are listening.
Hidden. That's his way of saying I talk too much.
No, not at all. But you skimmed over very quickly on the right way and the wrong way to email a potential mentor. And that's something that I see all the time. You know, we hear, I mean, this is like a normal thing for us. As soon as you become even the slightest bit visible, people want you to help them get to where you've gotten. And there are certain steps that you want to go through. And a lot of times, you know, many things that we want in life are the byproduct, not the actual thing you chase. And I think mentorship is one of those things. You don't just get a mentor. You make a friend with somebody who has similar, you know, not maybe issues, but similar things that they've gone through or whatever. And sometimes they've gone through it before you or whatever. You make a friend with this person. Sometimes it starts with a simple question. I'm going through this. I've noticed you've gone through this. Would you mind sending me a 1-paragraph email? Quickly, just let me know how I can solve this problem. And it sounds like a lot of humility in that as well is important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, what do you think the average person who's watching this, who aspires to be an entrepreneur, what can that person do to maybe make that dream a reality in terms of getting started? Like if there's somebody watching who wants to be an entrepreneur and they maybe after listening to you talk about your experience starting, they want to get started. I mean, do they put together a business plan? Is that something you guys did?
Oh, we actually had a 4-word business plan. It said, make money, have fun. And that was it, because I was like, I'm starting a business because I want to make a lot of money and I want to have fun, because I'm not having fun where I'm at right now. And that was it. And we never formalized a business plan. We never raised money, so we didn't have to have anything more structured. I don't think it's a bad thing to have a business plan, but I also think that the people who spend a lot of time on their business plan will probably tell you that like 85% of it is going to change, because you can't, you know, it's like saying I'm going to drive across the country and I'm going to map out not only exactly the route I'm going to take, but like what time I'm going to be everywhere and where I'm going to stop and how things are going to happen. And it's like, yeah, it's great to have that roadmap, but like you don't know if there's going to be traffic 45 minutes into your trip. So if you've figured out, like, I have to be at stop number 7 by this time, and that's contingent on your first 6 things happening a certain way, like, chances are you're not going to be at spot number 7 when you want to be at stop number 7. So I think a business plan should be something that people say, this is, like, directionally sort of where I want to go, but I'm going to be flexible enough to make changes, you know, in real time on the fly when I need to.
So really more about the result than having an official business plan or an official presentation or pitch deck or whatever. So there obviously is the right place and right time for those things, but not maybe necessarily something you have to be an expert at in order to be an entrepreneur. It's more about creating value and giving it, right?
Right. I think success as an entrepreneur is much more about having a product or a solution to a problem that people are going to pay you for. I mean, that's it, right? Like if your product is good enough, people are going to buy it. And that is where most entrepreneurs, I think, succeed or fail, is on the merit of the idea and the work that they put behind that idea.
Very cool.
You know, you can be the best aspiring entrepreneur in the world, and if you have a shitty product, like, probably not going to go that far.
Right.
Or if you have an amazing product, you can probably make a few more mistakes along the way, and people are going to, you know, give you a little bit more grace because they're like, oh man, this is an absolutely incredible product that the world needs. So a lot of it sort of lives and dies in the idea.
Cool. Well, what would be, you know, as we wrap up here, what would be maybe the key takeaways, if you will, that, you know, somebody watching this wants to know, like I said, how to become an entrepreneur, they're trying to learn from these interviews and real life stories of how to make that happen. From your story, what do you feel like your story teaches people about how to make that happen?
Gosh, no pressure. I would say that you're not going to get things you don't ask for, right? Like, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Don't be afraid to work hard for what you want, and don't be afraid to like take what you want without asking occasionally. You know, the saying, it's easier to get forgiveness than permission, is a famous saying for a reason, and that's because in a lot of instances it's absolutely true. So I think that the more you're willing to like chase after success and embrace failure on your path to success, the more likely you are to succeed ultimately.
Very cool. Well, it's been a ton of fun interviewing you. If somebody wants to keep in touch with you or follow your adventures as an entrepreneur and a mom and all of these other roles that you have right now, how could they do that? Is there a website or a social media platform you prefer?
Yeah, you know, to be honest, I'm not super great at keeping up with any of that,
Okay.
Because I'm spending a lot more time sort of like in real life with my family and my puppies and everything else. But yes, people can follow me just at Brittany Hodak is my Twitter handle.
Okay.
Also, they can check me out on Forbes and BrittanyHodak.com.
Very cool. Thank you again very much. It's been a ton of fun catching up with you and also asking you some of these questions that I didn't even know the answers to yet, even though we've known each other for a while. So thank you again. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this awesome, really fun interview with Brittany Hodak, co-founder of ZinePak, author, speaker, and many other things, now mom. Really, really fun catching up, and I'm sure we'll do it again sometime soon. But
yes, stay tuned for part 2 where I interview Jesse. Coming soon.
There you go. So thank you guys. I would love to hear your comments below in the comment section on this
But be
particular
nice.
interview.
No mean comments. Don't
That's
ask
right.
for comments. Are you crazy? Have
They
you
could
been
be-
on the internet? Do you know
No,
how
our
the internet
follower-
works?
You guys aren't like that, are
Do
you?
you know how comment sections work?
Not
Just
ours.
be nice, guys. I got like 3 hours of sleep and just had a baby. Please don't say anything mean.
Thank you, Brittany. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right.
Bye, guys.